Hi, and welcome to another episode of Can't Stop the Growth. I'm your host, Chad Peterman, and today we are joined by my good friend and master trainer at Nexstar. I have witnessed this guy put on a number of trainings as it relates to growing people and showing them how they can exponentially grow in what it is that they do. Couldn't be more proud to have him on the podcast with us and excited to learn from him. Without further ado, Thad David. Welcome to the podcast, Thad.
Thanks, Chad. How's it going?
Yeah, going well. Appreciate you taking a little bit of time out of, I would assume, what is now a more normal schedule with you traveling all the time.
Yeah, no, I'm happy that it worked out really well. I know reached out with it. I was pumped just to be a part of it. So I think it's
Yeah.
great.
Perfect. Well, we'll waste no time and jump right in. Why don't you tell the listeners, for those of you who don't know you or maybe not familiar with Nexstar, kind of your backstory and then kind of how you got into the trades leading up to what it is that you do for Nexstar now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was in back in 2001. Joined the Marines right after high school. I didn't really have a plan or know what I was going to do, and that I have a lot of family members that joined the military, so I did that. After the military, kind of got out and was introduced to the trades. I did some oddball stuff. Got introduced to the trades. Started working at Allen Service here in Fort Collins, Colorado, where I live now, which is also a Nexstar member, and that's when I started getting into facilitation and training in general, and started doing that at Allen Service, and then started more full time with Nexstar with that. I don't know if there's anything in particular you wanted. I know it's kind of a big. I just covered 20 years in about
Yeah.
30 seconds. So
that works. No,
yeah,
I definitely want to dive into a few of those experiences. Obviously, I know your backstory, but I wanted to give kind of the listeners a kind of a point of reference. Tell us a
yeah.
little bit about the military. I know you speak about it when you're doing your trainings as kind of a point of reference and stuff like that. Tell us a little bit about kind of maybe leadership lessons learned while in the military and maybe things that you carry forward today in your current role that you may have taken directly from there.
Yeah, definitely. So I was actually a recon Marine. So starting out, I went through boot camp at Parris Island, went through the School of Infantry in North Carolina. At what point in time they actually had about 300 people tried out for a slot to go to recon school. They picked two of us. We went to go to this other kind of holding pattern to wait out our chance to even go to recon. Fast forwarding through that at recon school, I ended up at First Recon Battalion, and from the leadership perspective, I'll never forget one. We were over in Iraq, and there was this interesting thing that everybody had to do during this time because there was really no setup, no infrastructure, anything like that. And one of the things we had to do was get rid of all of our, we had our human waste, if you will. Could have used some good plumbing companies out there, but we actually had to dump them into these huge holes and light them all on fire. And it was pretty disgusting to say the least. But I had one of my old team leaders, actually, it was my first experience with it, and he was in there right in the middle of everybody. Whereas up until that point, till I got to recon, everybody, it was always whoever the lowest man on the totem pole is always doing it. Whereas Josh, he was the one that would jump in, and he would always take any time that he could to make sure that he was quote unquote pulling his weight too. And I think at very least showing that he was pulling his weight when he could, because we knew he was busy. He was doing, set up ops and kind of game planning high level stuff. But it was always amazing to see him at least take some time whenever he could, and knowing that it made it easier to follow him and do exactly what he said, because I know that really stood out to me as a big leadership moment.
Yeah, for sure. As it relates to that, so one of the things that's always intrigued me about the military is hearing people like yourself who have served, and to hear, these, I mean, for lack of a better term, kids, they're in their early 20s, things like that. Would you say that in the military, they train you for that, or it's more a result of the culture that's in the military where you see these young people stepping up and doing things such as Josh did that are the quintessential elements of leadership, yet was that something that was taught or just something that you kind of grow to like understand as important with just the culture of the military itself?
Yeah, I think it's a cultural thing that you see as you look at people and you see other units, and we've all been in those situations where you see somebody or you have a leader over you that's doing something, and it's one of those like, man, I'm never going to do that. So it's one of those learning in that way because yeah, we were really young. I think my first deployment to Iraq, I was 20 years old, and Josh probably was no older than 24, but he had already been on a deployment. He had went to Afghanistan for that initial pump in and had already seen quite a bit. So I think a lot of it is just you see it, just like I saw him doing it. That was something that always stuck out to me, and I think it just kind of carries forward in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something I'm always quick to talk about here as it relates to kind of leadership is, understanding that a lot of leadership is built on the culture of the company and what the life that it takes on. Obviously, you've had the distinct pleasure of visiting a lot of companies and seeing a lot of things firsthand as companies do. What do you see from those companies who really excel, those ones that are kind of leading the pack? What do you see from their leadership team that may be similar, maybe different from your experience in the military? What do you see those companies doing that is allowing them to create that culture of leadership and growth that's making them so successful?
One thing that stands out to me is when that leadership team is present and really just being present to it, not even necessarily going through everything side by side, but stopping in and being present and being engaged and understanding what what you're asking your team to go through. Because I've been to some where I'd never even see a manager or owner, and there's others where very similar to with your shop where I usually see you each day, and a lot of people from your leadership team that are stopping in to check in. That nobody doubts how busy everyone is, yet it's that extra, it's that little bit of extra. Uh, I think it shows up. I want to say caring, and not that anyone cares more than the other team, but it's that being able to see it, being able to feel it. I think goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you make a really great point there, and the power of being present. Just as you spoke of Josh being present when doing, not a real glamorous task there.
No,
Probably the
yeah,
least glamorous of all tasks I can think
yeah,
of actually
yeah,
currently.
yep,
But just being present and understanding that everybody's in this together, I think goes a long way without really any words being spoken for sure.
yeah. There's nothing, no stories that need to be shared at the back end.
One thing I want to kind of touch on, and this may be kind of reverting back as I asked you a question about kind of your training today. What kind of attracted you to the trades? What got you in there? What did you learn from that you take forward today? Tell us a little bit about that experience and kind of how you grew during that time there.
Yeah, so I actually met somebody from Nexstar that just ran. I was waiting tables at a steakhouse and introduced it to me as far as just getting veterans into the trades, through Explore the Trades via Nexstar, the nonprofit that just introduces veterans and anybody that doesn't know about the trades. Um, what piqued my interest with it is I didn't really know anything about it. It was one of those I never knew really anything about the trades, and then the more that I heard about the amazing career that you could have, the more intrigued I was by it, and it was kind of one step at a time with it. I remember I moved out to Colorado, went to my first service system, had some job interviews during that service system, and that's where I met Mike and Jeff Allen, and was just very intrigued about what they were doing, what they had to offer, and it was a very new space for me, and the more I got into it, the more I realized how great it was.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your path there. So obviously you're new to the trades, you jump on in. Tell us a little bit about kind of your career journey there at Allen.
Yeah, so I applied. I wanted to get into sales. I actually applied for HVAC sales. That was really what I wanted to do. They told me that I didn't know anything about the trades, so I had to get in and learn. So they wanted me to start just doing ride-alongs and learning about the trade. So I started doing that for some time. I had just been through a service system, so they wanted me to start as I was learning the technical aspects of HVAC to start teaching and talking to people about the trades. Fast forward 2 3 months when it was time for me to start um, really going off on my own and exploring my own calls. They actually asked me to start doing ride-alongs and actually be a ride-along coach, which um, it's kind of silly. I actually turned him down. I told him no, that I didn't want to do it. And it said, you know what, we want to explore this and just see what it is. If you could just give us 6 months with this, if not, we'll throw you into your own truck. And so I took him up on it, and found I really enjoyed just the whole aspect of coaching and asking good questions, and helping people find a different way.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned something there at the end that I know that you're one of the more thoughtful people I've ever met, and I really appreciate that. And I think a lot of that stems from your questions and your curiosity. What would you say the impact of asking great questions and on the flip side, listening or active listening plays as it relates to leadership?
So many good things there. I was actually just listening to something earlier today, which total side note from this question, but it just said a lot of times from the leadership role that a lot of people just want to feel heard, even if it's not even acted upon, that if they just even feel like you heard them, that goes way further than actually changing anything in that respect. So a lot of times just feeling heard is really good. And that's not my intent for doing it, but it was just something that I was listening to a book earlier on lunch, and that it really resonated with me, that just hearing somebody, for me, the the idea, it shows that you care when you're asking about it. But then also, more often than not, I found out there's something that I don't know about a situation, that it's easy to look at it surface level and say, oh, this is what should be done. And you really don't know the gravity of what's happening for that person. And once they unpack it and they talk about it, it's easy to see why they're thinking what they're thinking. And more oftentimes, they know exactly what to do. And as I as I do it more and see it more, I understand, one, that they know what to do, but then two, it's really empowering other people. And that's really what leadership is helping other people find the way, not telling them the way, but helping them and empowering them to do it. And so it, uh, I think it kind of snowballs once it's done.
Yeah, and I think that the whole listening, being heard, uh, I think is extremely critical as it relates to leadership. A lot of people equate leadership as I get to tell everybody what to do, and in all actuality, it's you get to listen to everybody, figure out what their problems are, and then help them overcome those. When you're training, what do you do, or what are some things that help you as a facilitator for people to overcome those challenges? I'm sure that you get presented all kinds of challenges as to why they may not be able to follow, Nextstar's service system, or why it's never going to work, or I do it this way. What are some of those things that you do as it relates to kind of being the leader of that training that work to try to help them overcome, what Nextstar and what you refer to as kind of those dirty filters in their mind?
Yeah. So, and that I think circles right back to the listening, and really asking one more question, because usually the stated objection is not the real objection. So whatever and it's also not the solution either. So whatever is being vocalized usually isn't the, the root of where it's stemming from. And so not clinching onto that so much as just asking for clarity, and digging a little bit deeper into that to see where it is. Because I was talking to somebody today in a sales training, or just kind of a one-off. Somebody asked me to jump on with their sales team, and so we were just having a little 45-minute uh, Zoom call, and somebody threw up an objection about the customers not going with you on the explore step. And that was where he was really, really hung up. And then as we unpacked and talked more, he was like, oh, well, I haven't been doing the agenda card. I don't like that thing. I'm like, oh, okay, what could that do? But it's whereas for him, nobody's going with me. They don't care about going with me, when the reality is, well, maybe they would, if you let them know what to expect from the day, if you included them early on. And so, um, but he's the one that uncovered that, from asking him questions and getting clarity. So that's a big thing for me. Just circles right back to the questions, and being really intently listening.
Yeah, and from a leader's perspective, listening to those that you're leading, it can sometimes be tough because you know the answer, right? And I just want to tell them, and you just need to go over here. And I'm sure you've had instances during a training when you just want to shake somebody and say, "Would you just listen to me, please?" what helps you get over that frustration that leaders can often sometimes, experience with taking the time to ask the questions to allow them to discover what are some tools that you could share with other leaders as far as, you know, how to listen without getting frustrated?
Yeah, that's a really good one. And I think if we, circle back to when we first, all of our biggest lessons are usually when we uncovered something ourselves. And as I'm talking to leaders, I like to remind them of that hey, some of your biggest lessons, what make you so good right now is because you uncovered it, you figured it out. That's why you're so strong today. So why would you take that opportunity away from them? Like that's their opportunity, is to grow and learn, because they need to do it themselves too. So all we can do is guide and give them the things that we know that support that. Um, Rarely do we remember the things we were told what to do, but when we discovered it, that's the power. And so just remembering that's my biggest lessons, and hopefully coming from a space of I'm here to help guide you on that.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that I've always been intrigued by you about, and oftentimes I make a point to our team to watch you, not when you're training, but prior to and post training. Tell us a little bit about what you do prior to. I have a pretty good
Yeah.
insight, but what you
Yeah.
do prior to
Yeah.
and what you do post training, because as it relates to leadership, I think it's extremely important to kind of mimic some of the stuff that you may do in your preparation.
Yeah. Well, and that's it. The separation and the preparation is that's what it all boils down to. Um, I I'm set up, if I have a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday training, barring anything, that I can't get into a room to set it up. There is not a single thing that needs to be done for that training after night one. That, like Tuesday night, if training starts on Wednesday, there's not a single thing that needs to be done in the room. Everything is laid out for every single day. Everything's ready to go, because that's the stuff that I can control. The the outliers are the things that I don't know are going to happen, that are going to happen. It's just there's going to be random things that pop up. So if by having all of those little things ready to go, it just makes it easier for me to be focused on those things. If somebody has an objection that pops up early on, then I can be fully focused, because I don't have to put them down and say, "Hey," not, I don't mean put them down in a negative way, but put them down and say, "Oh, I can't really focus on you right now because I got to go make this poster." And so I can be really, really fully present to it. But that's, to me, that preparation is, I felt, has always saved me uh, at least a lot of time, so I can be focused where I need to. So a lot of preparation is what I do, and then the end of each day, I like to get the whole room set up. If I moving posters around, but it's, for me, it's all about preparation for the next day, and making sure that everything's in a good space going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things, or one of the things that you've said multiple times now, that I think is maybe a little bit, or maybe something that we could unpack a little bit, is this idea of presence and being present. As leaders, we're pulled in 14 million different directions on a daily basis, but it's those times when we need to be present with those that we're leading that I think we make the biggest strides forward. What in your life, or what has led to you discovering the importance of presence? And is there anything that you kind of, if you get off course when it comes to being present in a conversation, that helps redirect you back on that path?
A really good question. I'm trying to think of lessons there, and I think it's just one that, just the act of me being present, being physically there, doesn't mean I'm actually present. And I think that goes to leadership, to your kids. I travel. I spend a lot of time on the road. Whereas when I get home, I have to be fully present to my family. I don't have to be. I want to be. I want to make sure that these are the biggest moments. So when I'm home, I'm super present, super engaged to everything that's going on here. And so it shows up in a lot of different places. But if you're not fully present, I think that we pick up on that. And then people in general, they're going to be less likely to open up. That we all know, when you're talking to somebody and you can see them kind of check out, or their mind kind of goes, and it's like, oh, they already know what they're going to say next. Like, why? I should just stop talking right now. I've stopped. I've had to catch myself because I'll stop a conversation and I'll just say, "Well, sounds like it looks like you have something you want to say. What's going on? What's on your mind?" Because you can see when somebody just checks out and they already have what they want to say without your knowledge. And so just being really present. A participant told me once, make sure to be where your feet are, and that always stuck out with me. That just make sure you're wherever your feet are. That's where you should be, and that always stuck with me.
Yeah. No, I think that's incredibly insightful because it is so easy to be somewhere else and really just look at the time you spend with those that you lead, or even your family. I think the one thing that I've really had to check myself on is one thing that you said there is being present with your family. To me, the workplace is a lot easier to develop our leadership skills because the leadership opportunities present themselves, I think, a little bit more clearly. And we understand that, okay, we have to be there for this, we have to be there for that. But I find myself having to continually check the leader that I am at home. Because at the end of the day, being a spouse, being a father, a mother, whatever your role is in that family, takes being present and it takes leadership. What would you say to how you know your leadership style and maybe some similarities between kind of in the workplace and stuff that you take into the home? Obviously, you've got younger kids, so it probably maybe a little bit different depending
Yeah,
on the age of your children.
yeah.
But what would you say are some of those things that while maybe looked at as kind of inconsequential, are kind of leadership pieces that you've got to continually work on as maybe a father?
I'm thinking about my son turns 3 next month, and he's like a little terrorist running around. He's phenomenal. He's great, but I can see, hear him. He's so sweet when he wants to be, and I think he's really developing a really awesome personality. Um, but for me, I I love watching and asking him some really good questions, and that gets back to that listening too. Actually hit me. I read this. I've actually got it right here. This "Oh Crap" potty training book that they. I was just flipping through it, and everybody's got their different style of potty training, all that stuff. But they actually said something in there that blew me away. It takes the average toddler 30 seconds to process the question you just asked them. Not to find their answer, to literally just know what question you asked them so that they can start to think about an answer. So anytime you ask a toddler, and when I ask my son something, I'll start to count like one, two, and how quickly we jump over the top of them and say, oh, gotta do this. Oh, where do you want to eat? Why don't you know? You're so, ADD, all this stuff. And we want to blame all this stuff when the reality is we're not even giving them the time to think. For them, they're learning a new language right now. If I was to learn French or Italian and be 1 year in and then go to Italy and somebody starts, I would like just shut down. And I think a lot of the anxiety we create stems from that right there. And so it makes me wonder if we've grown up that way, and I grew up that way, we all did. And then this gets to participants, people we work with, that where we aren't fully listened to, that sometimes when we ask, we just have to like give a second, like let's give them a moment to think about it. Because if you asked a really good question, they probably need a minute to think about an answer to it. And so that was one thing that really impacted me, big picture, from the stance of being a father, but also just in general when I'm speaking to a room or to anyone.
Yeah, yeah. There's nothing more I enjoy of either like I said earlier, catching myself doing something that I preach at work, like not to do, like not listening or not giving, not allowing. We do a lot of work with the disc profile, and my wife and I are complete opposites on the disc profile, and so what I would preach at work is, well, you need to bend into that other style of thinking and processing and stuff like that. And there's some times from time to time I won't do a whole lot of bending. It's a whole lot
Yeah.
of why don't you bend my way? And I think that understanding and the cool part about leadership is that we can carry it over into our personal lives. Leadership is something that the principles still exist, whether I'm at home, whether I'm in the workplace, whether I'm out with friends, whatever it is. What role has leadership played in kind of molding kind of your personal core values? Um, you know, I, as it relates to the person that Thad wants to be, not so much the trainer, not so much obviously those all of your roles kind of mold into who you are as a person. Where do you find that leadership has played a role in that?
And that's been an interesting, just over the last year or so, as I think about all of it, like who I am, how I show up at work, how I show up at home, how I show up with my friends. And I found myself thinking about that, like, why should it be any different? And how much integrity do I have if I'm somebody different in the training room? If I go and ask questions and I'm very intently listening, and then if I went out with my friends and I was a totally different person, or if I went back home and I was a totally different person, that, you know, I think there would be a lot of just internal strife there, that you've got to pick one and just, what are you going to be? Whether it's this, or being a great leader in the training room and being a great leader at home, and making that conscious choice that it's going to be everywhere. Because I think that a lot of times work is work, and you mentioned it, how easy it is to, the leadership opportunities are very obvious at work, yet when you get home we tend to, let's take the shoes off and put our feet up, and now I'm at home, so I get to relax a little bit, when that should be the time to really shine with leadership. And so that for me has just been, I think, like all leadership is a conscious choice, that I'm going to show up differently with this. And it was probably, I don't know the time frame, but about a year ago I started really thinking about, how am I showing up at home, and what does that look like? What are my conversations, and how do I want to be perceived at home? What do I want that to be like? So it's definitely been a journey that I would say I have not mastered, and I am still very present to, and committed to getting it right, and being
Yeah.
a great leader at home. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you bring up a great point there of trying to be two different people, trying to be that person at work while that's not really who you are. You're just doing it for the particular role.
mhm.
And I have to watch myself sometimes because I'm a proponent of, as a leader, you've got to be a little bit different person for each of those that you lead, depending on what their needs are. But I think that those core values have to remain a constant in your life, whether it be at home, whether it be at work, and hopefully those are what's guiding your actions or moving you towards um, where you need to be for others. Um, what I wanted to dive back into the question. So, our your son and my daughter are very close in age, and I couldn't help but laugh when you said the questions because I view questions. This may not be the best leadership tactic. I view questions as a way to stop the questions. Why? 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 And then ask them a question back and let the 30 seconds break of while they
Yeah.
process. Like,
Yeah.
all right, shoot, I stumped them, rather than answer their question only to be followed by another question. But
Yeah.
where, you teach, which I think is extremely extremely helpful of for technicians to ask questions of the customer to build that bond, to uncover needs and different things like that. From a leadership perspective, where do we need to really focus those questions, do you think, when it comes to the people that we're leading? Where do those questions, one, need to come from as the leader, and two, need to be directed at to get to the core of what those obstacles are for the person that we're leading and or the customer that we're trying to help? Where do you see that those need to be directed at for them to be effective?
Yeah, and I'm visually going back because earlier when you were talking about that you're showing up a little differently, um, with the same core values at home and at work, and I hearing you mention how you flex a little bit for your wife, and you're asking her to flex that sort of thing. That's the difference is we're going to flex differently for each person, but the intent is always the same, and it's kind of the same thing with the people we're leading that we're going to flex a little differently with them, but the intent is always there, and hopefully that we've got the intent. I'm here to help you, that it's coming from that space, because if they feel that, you can ask some really big questions of them, and they're gonna be okay with it because they know what your intent is. And as far as the direction of it, I would want to know what's important to them, like what is important to them, why, you know, not how can you help me, but how can I help you, and what does that look like for you, because everybody's a little different with um, what they want out of life. You know, not everybody wants money. Some people just want time at home. I was talking to a participant the other day. I share the story pretty often or pretty frequently, but this his big thing. He just said he wanted more money, more money, more money, and I was like, "What are you going to do with more money? You know, let's do it, let's get it. But what are you going to do?" And he said he just wanted to go fishing with his son. I was like, "When are you going to do that?" And he was like, "Well, we usually go on Saturdays. We go out to this pond." I was like, "Man, what's like, go get the money too, but what's stopping you from doing that right now?" and and it was really like helping him see clearly of where he wants to go, not with the intent of guiding him. And I think that's where uh, if they can feel us leading them in a direction they don't want to go, it can be bad. But truly just understanding what is it you want to get, where do you want to, and how can I help you. So that would be my focus is having good intent and helping to uncover what it is they want, because I think a lot of us don't really ask ourselves those questions about what we want truly, and how we're going to go get it. So that would be my thoughts on it.
Yeah, for sure. That reminds me, and I guess it reminds me of a few of the things that you said. I taught a leadership class last Friday, and the concept of that guy named Brian Byro, who's written a couple of books, more so on kind of motivation, leadership, different things like that. But he has this acronym that he relates to being a good coach, and it's ESPN. So easy if you're a sports fan.
Huh.
But he says, what you should do as a leader is, be a world class, what he calls buddy thinker. And the ESPN stands for how to thank people is you need to, um, you need to do it with excitement and reward for energy and effort, not so much results. And I think that's critical. The S stands for surprise. So I think, as you said, there just a minute ago, of finding out what they want. I think sometimes that can catch people by surprise. It's always, well, what's the company want? What's my role in the company? And it's like, no, what is it that drives you? Like, the company's here to provide a means for you to get what you want. Obviously the company has to win, no doubt, for it to keep going and all of that stuff.
Right.
But I think that's critical to the understanding. The P is for present. So being present. So you've talked about that a couple of times, that we've dove a little bit deeper into that. And then the N is for what you just talked about with the participant who wanted to go fishing. And the N stands for now. So it's thank those you lead with energy and effort, for energy and effort. The S is surprise, the P is present, and the N is do it now. And I think what you said is perfect, in that, too many times we sit around and think about where we need to go, how we're going to get there, what that's going to look like, this, that, and the other, when at the end of the day, we just need to go do it. And I think that a lot of leadership is, spent in books and, podcasts and seminars and this, that, and the other. And at the end of the day, you just need to go do it. You need to go be a leader. You need to go have a conversation. You need to go ask questions, and make an impact in someone's life, like now. It's a very simple concept, yet I feel like sometimes we don't we don't use that now principle to make something happen.
Yeah, definitely making sure to do, and that's the trick. That's all. I was here. I heard this story of this magician who did this great act, and this kid jumped up and said, "I know how you did it." And I said, "Well, that's not the point. Like, you can read 1,000 books on magic. The point is I'm doing it. Like, I'm doing the trick." And they equated it over to leadership, that we there's 1,000 books on leadership. There's very few that actually do it. And that's the separation of most leaders, is just being committed to doing it right now. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I found myself in that. I used to be like a huge reader. I say used to be, like, I still read quite a bit, but I feel like I got into like a point where, like, I don't know what else I can read. It's saying somewhat in the same fashion the same thing. I need to go do it. So I kind of turned my morning routine into what are the activities of the day going to be. So rather than reading how to be present, how to ask questions, all of that stuff, it's like, what questions am I going to ask today? Who am I going to be present with? What am I going to do today that's going to make a difference? So I guess as it relates to that, obviously or you seem to be, in the times that we've interacted, is very structured and have kind of a process to what it is that you do. Is there anything that you do, either morning routine or any routine that you have throughout the course of your day, that kind of gets you, helps you get centered, helps you, be that person that you want to show up as?
yeah, for me, my morning workout is is very critical time for me. Just waking up and getting a workout in, of any kind. I've found that if I'm on the road, that can, it can change depending on if I'm at a hotel, and they don't, I've been to several that don't have a gym, or there's a picture of it and you get there and there's no gym. So it could look like I prefer to go and hit the weights, by going to do a run, and at very least doing, a couple reps of push-ups. But anything I can do like that, that gets my my mind headed into a good direction, is something that I really enjoy. I usually throw in either a good podcast or a good book that I'm listening to, and kind of go through that workout routine. I find that helps me get centered. um,
Yeah, absolutely.
so
I couldn't agree with you more. One of the things I've been trying here lately, it seems really simple, and a lot of people talk about it, is the glass of water. So really making a conscious effort to put the glass of water by the bedside. Um, it's amazing. Like, I'm like, "Yeah, this is just water," but I feel a heck of a lot more awake
really,
now. So they say it kicks off your metabolism and get you rolling in the morning. I've been doing that for a couple of weeks now, and I feel a lot better. Maybe it's just the placebo
really,
effect that
how much water are you drinking?
oh, just a small glass. So it's
Ah,
actually the funny would have it. So the Yeti cup that they gave us at a super meeting, the little white one that was like, did they make a cup this small? This is so odd. Like, I don't even know if this would hold a whole
yeah,
cup of
I
coffee.
know which
That's
one
the
you're
cup.
talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the cup I've been using, because it's like the perfect size. It's like bigger than a small glass, but not a huge glass. So not super intimidating.
That's good
But
to know. That's the one.
yeah.
That's just enough water that'll get you going.
Yeah, gets me going. So, what you mentioned listening to some books, listening to some podcasts. What do you, not so much like a book recommendation, unless you want to give one, but like something you're learning about right now, something you're passionate about that you're really diving into as far as trying to understand better.
And it's a so right now it actually gets into the, I think, a lot of just doing, what you mentioned. For a while, it was, I was focused on my own time management. Spent a lot of time focused on that, several months diving into that, and I've been on this kick of just the art of doing. A lot of times we sit there and talk about doing. This book, I've probably read it in the last 2 months 3 times now, and I'm fascinated with this book, called The Practice, and it's I've actually got it right here. It's a phenomenal read. I just realized as I got up to walk away that I can see you, but nobody else is going to be able to see me. But it's right here, Seth Godin, and just a phenomenal read um, about actually doing the work. I mean, it's called Shipping Creative Work, and he talks about artists. If you're whether you're a painter, a writer, but he actually references leadership in this one as well. That leadership is a form of art, also. That any form of art changes other people, and so it's um, that's been a big focus for me is just doing the things that I want to set out to go do. Whether it's a series of wake up calls, or right now one thing I'm working on is post training videos and just doing them versus the thinking about doing it and prepping to do it versus just nope, just go do it because you're till you're doing it, you're not actually someone that does that. So
Yeah,
that was I don't know if that
absolutely.
answers your
Yeah, no,
question at all, but
that's
that's where I'm
no.
at right now.
I think that ties in, is kind of a way to come full circle. We talked about practice in the beginning and doing and making the effort to be present. What as we kind of wrap up here, this episode, what's something that either as it relates to leadership or what you're learning about or anything we've talked about, what's that one thing that you would leave the audience with, as kind of that key principle or golden nugget, if you will, of information that you really think someone can go act on immediately?
To me, it always circles back to just being the responsibility aspect of it. I think it's one of those terms that gets thrown around often, that we're accountable and we take responsibility, but to truly lean into it is one of the more difficult things. And I think that's why people shy away from it, because it's to find your own responsibility inside of anything, whether you're not happy with how your team is being run or you're not happy with anybody. Well, how are you responsible for that? Because that's it takes a certain level of uh, humility and commitment to take that on every single, I mean, just daily, constantly. How am I responsible for this, and what am I going to do next? That the moment we stop that, it, everything else will just kind of goes by the wayside, because it's no longer about what I'm doing to impact this. It's, well, everything is just going to be what it is. So if you're not committed to that daily, then it's going to be a tough road ahead.
That's I think that's a phenomenal thing to kind of wrap up on, and it's that concept of kind of extreme ownership, of taking ownership over what happens in your life. And I know I had a experience recently here at the office where I'm known for probably being positive to a fault, and I just feel like it's my goal to in my responsibility to be positive, and hey, there's always a solution. But I was doing some listening and doing some reading, and I think this kind of goes along with kind of your ownership concept of, you know, while most would say, well, the person being somewhat negative or critical of an idea, well, they're in the wrong, and the person being positive, well, they're in the right, right? I mean, that
Yeah.
seems like a logical thing to think. And I started listening, and I heard this concept of what they call toxic positivity. And it is something that I'm doing a little bit of research on and haven't dove completely into it yet. But it was that piece that when I heard it, I go, oh, well, how am I taking responsibility for this particular situation, as opposed to just blaming the person who's being critical of the idea? Well, they're so critical. Like, I can't believe they can't see my great idea and like everything's going to be okay. And like, let's think positive about the situation. But at the end of the day, maybe there's a piece of that where bringing that up in a meeting and saying, hey guys, I think that this may be an issue of mine, or I may be projecting this onto you guys and causing some problems. Let's talk about it. What do you think? And I think for me, that was kind of an eye opener of literally every situation in our life. And, it is one that we can take responsibility for. Good, bad, indifferent. There is a role and a responsibility that can be taken by us. And when we make that shift to taking responsibility, to taking ownership, to wanting to be present, that is when our leadership shows through. It is the followers who will lean on somebody else to blame the problem or to hope they find a fix. It's those that want to stand up and say, "Hey, I'll take responsibility for this. It may not be my fault. Don't confuse fault and ownership. But what am I going to do to help the situation?" And I think that is extremely critical, especially with some of the stuff that we talked about of going to do something now and not waiting and being there and understanding what's in it for those we lead. So, with that, again, Thad, I thank you for your time. I know you're a busy man, usually on the road. Lucky enough to catch you at home today. So, um,
Thank
yeah,
you very
just really
much.
appreciate the time. Yeah, appreciate your insight into leadership and you sharing a little bit about your story, and how leadership's impacted it, and then how you're trying to live out your life in order to become a better leader. So, thank you very much.
Absolutely, Jed. Thank you very much. Was pleased to be able to come be a part of it. I love what you're doing. If I can shout out too, every time I brush my teeth now, I have a little 2-minute timer on my toothbrush. I'm always committed to, you had one comment in one of your podcasts about the 2-minute timer and that being a goal, just hit the 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And so now every time I'm brushing my teeth, I always think about you. I'm like, when's it going to happen? I don't know. But if Chad's doing it for 2 minutes, I'm going to hit the 2-minute mark. So thank you
Yeah,
for that. I appreciate it.
exactly. I'm glad I'm contributing to your overall oral hygiene, Thad. That is exciting,
Yeah.
and that made my day. Frankly,
It's a win. It's a win. It's a win.
yeah, you let your dentist know not only teaching about leadership but also hygiene. So no, that's great. That's awesome. I'm glad. There
Yeah.
again, those little wins
Those
are
little
what add
wins.
up.
That's
Exactly.
they do, and it feels good.
For sure. So again, thank you, audience out there. Thank you again for listening. Keep growing out there. Every day is an opportunity to get just a little bit better, to accomplish one of those little wins that's going to propel you to something bigger. So thanks again for listening. And until next time, we'll see you.